All right, this is Matt Pegas with New Ritual Press. I'm here with Cairo Smith, the author of our sophomore release, SCENEBUX, being released this Saturday, September 6th. Cairo is also the author of Kalanisha Dreaming and Quarter Lives, which I wrote the intro to. He's a filmmaker as well, the director of Screwdriver, among many other accomplishments. But Cairo, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Matt, and I really appreciate you elevating me and my voice, literally in this case, so thank you. So there's sometimes people say, I had a UCLA professor interviewing me for the film program there that I did not get into, said something like, you've got so many different things on your resume. What is the through line? Right? I guess he was politely trying to say, like, I have no idea how to make sense of your career. And I mean, the answer is just that I do what I'm interested in.
As one must.
Yeah. And I think that, like, if I am choosing to just ride whatever hyper-focus is driving me on a project, like, that passion will have a positive effect on the work. So.
Yeah. And we've obviously talked many times, including doing New Right podcast, etc. But so I've asked you this before, but I'll ask again. How long have you sort of been in the creative realm? You've been writing almost your whole life, right? As well as being a filmmaker and drawing.
Yeah, I've been writing my whole life since I think I have even typed screenplays from when I was 4 or 5. I grew up around a lot of creative people of various levels of professionalism, so I was lucky to always have the idea that was possible in my head, and parents who weren't just going to dismiss me and say, oh, don't do that. My dad is an actor, and I did sort of consciously choose not to act. Probably the biggest reason was I didn't think I was very good at it, but also there's a little bit of freedom in not trying to do exactly what your parents do. So for that reason, I sort of found myself at home behind the camera. I also did briefly want to be an illustrator, or specifically a concept artist, like for video games, which I'm really glad I didn't go into, both because video games are a very brutal industry as far as the work culture, and obviously digital art is being really disrupted right now. So I think that would be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like to me, every time I've heard you tell this story, like it's a good place to be, sort of having the creative parents and the creative background, growing up obviously in Los Angeles, being surrounded by it. It both gives you a good beginning within various media, but also at the same time, it gives you enough leeway to, it's not just like you're shoved into some craft. You can really choose what to do, and you can have very outside of the box takes on your medium, whether it's filmmaking or writing, which I think applies to your work very, very well. You mentioned, even a little bit of rebellion perhaps against exactly what your parents are doing. There's a sort of critical distance one can get when they grow up within something rather than just being carried away by the glam of Hollywood or something. You really grew up in it and were able to play with it, if that resonates at all.
Yeah, I think I did. It's funny to say Hollywood because there are so many sub niches within entertainment.
Of course. Yeah.
And my dad being a voice actor, it almost culturally falls more into post-production than, say, production or development.
Right.
It's very centered around Burbank. You have these ADR studios, VO. It's this whole culture that has a lot in common with, like, post or VFX culture. So it's not like I was, meeting like anyone involved in like CAA or UTA or anything like that. It's almost a very sort of like pseudo blue collar culture, right? Of people just showing up, for a job, doing a day's work, et cetera, having guilds.
No, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think to go to one of the things you initially said, which struck me, is, you really just do what interests you in the moment, and it seems like having that as a guiding principle has served you really well. And again, to me it's like I tie it in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but in my head, the fact that you grew up around so many different types of creative people and people in the entertainment industry maybe informed that decision. You kind of see what works for people and what doesn't, and what good, you just develop a more critical eye for what the good projects are, and it would seem that those are the ones with the real passionate spark behind them.
I think the biggest thing that being exposed to Hollywood for a long time does is makes you realize that, and I wrote about this recently, a lot of the decision makers in the chain are not very smart.
True.
Yeah. So this is not to say they're dumb. I mean, they are just fairly average people. So I think that can give you a little bit of confidence to do something that maybe wouldn't get picked up. Yeah. Like, you can't, if you're trying to make great art, you can't use like, would this get picked up for studio development as like your shorthand for, is this great art? Right.
Yeah, it's like you're so exposed, and this has happened to me not growing up here, but even just working in the industry and being around it. You are around that, what's going to get picked up mindset for so long that in a way it should inform you as to like, in a more mercantile way, like what should get picked up, what would make money, but it also enables you to sort of see around that, because I think past a certain point you realize it's such a game, right? Like what sells, and therefore the only things worth doing are things you care about in the first place, because you could sweat long hours over a project that seems like it should get picked up, and then it just doesn't for the most arbitrary and random reason.
Yeah, and I've tried to be clear, I have tried to sell out. I think I'm actually less successful trying to sell out than I am just doing what interests me. When especially with literature, I've had periods in my life where I've read through what's called the manuscript wish list of, say, 100 different agents. And I'm trying to assemble something that I think, okay, this is going to be to taste, to market. I'm writing exactly what these agents say they want. It doesn't get me any farther than just writing whatever insane thing I want to write. And the downside of that is that if it doesn't get picked up in a big way, I've written something that doesn't fully represent me. Yeah, or if I like it, it's with caveats, right?
Yeah.
So at least writing whatever I want, if I'm going to either independently publish or publish with a small press like New Ritual, it's something I can get behind.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Pivoting a little bit to SCENEBUX.
Yeah.
What would you say was the primary spark behind this latest work? Or actually, let me bracket that question. I want to get to that. But do you think people who've read your previous works and maybe even seen your movies are going to be surprised by the the content of SCENEBUX? Do you think it is a change of pace for you, or do you think it's pretty classic Cairo Smith?
The unfortunate answer is that it is both classic Cairo Smith and completely new. At the level of the sensibility and the plotting that undergirds it, there are a lot of through lines with Kalanisha.
Yeah,
both are a noir, semi-hard-boiled detective story about a young man navigating a strange sort of postmodern landscape, right?
Yeah.
However, Kalanisha is this very dense, difficult to penetrate fantasy world, right? That is very much was my indulgence of world building. And this, although it is its own kind of world building, SCENEBUX is like in our world. It's almost like sort of in this fairy plane that's just under our world.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's very different.
It's very Pynchon-esque, not to be name droppy, but in that sense, it's. I mean, actually, Pynchon novels often sometimes go to pretty wonky places, whereas SCENEBUX, for as picaresque and as high-flying as it sort of is, it's pretty grounded, too. It really could happen in our world as it is. But nevertheless, Pynchon-esque seems to be the best comparison.
Yeah, I've actually been really gratified that for SCENEBUX, the two authors that people say it reminds them of the most are also the ones I had in mind, being Pynchon and William Gibson, specifically Neuromancer. I read Neuromancer last year and it had a big effect on me because I'm a big fan of cyberpunk, and it's funny. ARX Han has a good quote where he basically says it's very hard to write cyberpunk now because real life is just cyberpunk. Right? Cyberpunk just became true. And so I think if you are writing contemporary fiction, you sort of are a student of Gibson in that sense, at least if you're trying to do like contemporary noir.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so that's been gratifying to see people pick up on that influence in a positive way.
Gibson, maybe even more so than Pynchon, but both.
I'd say it's pretty much an even split. I would.
Gotcha.
There's a way that Pynchon reminds you that it's all a bit tongue in cheek with names. And I was definitely trying to do that on some.
Yeah, no, it comes across. But on a more gut level, what was the spark? And we've talked about this offline, but posing it to you now, what was the real spark behind writing SCENEBUX?
SCENEBUX is an adaptation of a story that I conceived actually for about 4 years ago, which is very strange because it's before I knew you,
this is actually new to me. I didn't realize this, but
before I knew sort of any of this. SCENEBUX sort of came into my head when I first became aware of this idea of young people being heterodox in San Francisco and trying to cause trouble at this period where you were just sort of starting to see this glimmer of something that would come after the social justice mania, right?
Right, and after the pandemic too.
Yeah, exactly. This post-pandemic, post-social justice, what are these young people doing, right? And you can make glib comparisons to artistic movements, whatever, Algonquin Round Table. I think if you make any of those comparisons, you are blowing smoke up your ass or their ass, because all these movements are defined and remembered because they produced great writers.
Yeah.
Currently, there's no like teapot great author,
Sadly,
But it's
maybe
also,
Cairo Smith.
Yeah, maybe Cairo Smith. I don't know. And I've deliberately, I think, been kind of elliptical about like, what do I belong to? Which is like this very... there's a tendency of the writer sometimes as the voyeur to want to be very immersed in his subject that he's studying and yet retain this distance. Same thing with a film director.
Yeah.
And I definitely have that. I have this desire to at once be very close and very intimately know the subject and yet retain this plausible deniability of, I'm just here to observe. I'm not one of you or one of us, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like by writing, I create that thin film through which I'm perceiving everything that's described in the book.
I see. Because you're not, like I'm reading I've been reading a lot of Tom Wolfe recently, so you're a little bit of that, like almost journo fictional, but at the same time not. I mean, you're a friend of ours. I'm not really part of Teapot. Am I part of whatever Red Scare adjacent scene? Sorta not. But in many ways you are too, I would say. I think that's fair.
Sure.
But also there is that thin film layer that is added when you put yourself in the shoes of the writer.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that this is probably actually an inevitable thing that occurs when you write. Even if you're writing about yourself, people talk a lot about autofiction. The unobserved experience becomes observed in writing about it, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like there's no such thing as an innocent experience that is written about, because the act of analyzing it removes the innocence. It's like the only way to read about an innocent experience is for it to be lived and then only written about in retrospect, right? Yeah, I don't...
No, that's interesting. So to back up a step,
sure,
I guess, how, you have a good resume. The one thing I wanted to highlight earlier when we were talking about growing up out here and your various activities, you've won many screenwriting competitions. You can name drop them if you want. Or go ahead. Why not?
Yeah, sure. So I if I can even remember, I won the Page Award.
Right, which even I've heard of that one, and I'm not.
Yeah, that's like the second biggest one after the Nickel. I've never even gotten to semis in the Nickel, but for some reason the Page liked me a lot. And I won Final Draft's Big Break, which I would say is maybe number 4. And yeah, there's a weird thing about winning giant screenwriting competitions and then you get a little attention and then life just kind of goes on. And it's not just me. I know other guys, very talented writers for whom this has happened. And it's almost like the business is just saying we're full.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and I didn't necessarily intend the tangent on screenwriting, but it's a worthy one. It is this sad thing, a screenwriter's plight is that it is in so many ways, it's such a distinct art from filmmaking to be able to do it well, and a good script doesn't always make a good movie. I mean, I guess really, a well-written script will always get you somewhere, but the blacklist is long.
A well-written script will not
all right.
Somewhere. It will usually get you nowhere.
Okay, I stand corrected. So sorry, I just meant they're not, filmmaking and screenwriting are not so disconnected that that literally, like, in theory, if you can write a screenplay well, you've done good to any director that handles it. But does it ever get that far? Of course not. In general, these things are passed over. The blacklist is long. So you know that very well.
If I could say one thing to screenwriters who have placed or won in these big competitions, just novelize your script.
Yeah.
It's a good story. It will probably never get made.
And if it does, it will be because someone read the book.
Yes. And don't... I said to someone the other day, I'm just sick of seeing product spoil on the shelf. And that's really how I feel about a lot of these stories.
Unpublished screenplays, yeah.
Exactly. Novelize it or novellaize it, because a lot of them aren't long enough to be a novel.
Yeah.
Don't pad it. If it's going to be 30,000 words, just make it 30,000 words. Don't even query it. Just put it out there. People deserve to read it. You deserve to have it read.
Absolutely. Sorry, unintended tangent on screenwriting, but it's very necessary to a lot of what you do. You're a novelist as well as a screenwriter. So and your books, including SCENEBUX, maybe especially SCENEBUX, are very very, very cinematic in many ways. I mean, do you find the arts are related?
I would say SCENEBUX is the least cinematic thing I've ever written.
Really? Interesting.
By far. And that's because I wrote it ground up as this Holden Caulfield-esque first-person stream of consciousness. It's actually the first-person novel I've ever written.
Yeah. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But when one of my first questions, like, what is this new territory? In my head, it is, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but maybe it's as simple as that. It is a little closer than you often get.
Yeah, and that's, I think, partially the result of responding to feedback. People, loved ones, people who love me enough to read my work will say, I loved the way you wrote this, but I felt a little bit of distance from the character. And, if anything, maybe that is a vestige of screenwriting, because in screenwriting, you write in the third person, and then it's the actor who fills in. It's like they're painting in the lines that you've drawn. But when it's a novel, it's all you, right? You have to be the actor as well as the writer in that film sense. So it's like, in a way, writing in the first person, it forces you. It's like you're physically squished up next to your protagonist.
No,
right?
That's interesting.
And
yeah.
as a result, the audience is too.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way to not know them.
Absolutely. Sorry, I got on the screenwriting thing because I was going to say, you have a really good resume. You've had some success even in the more normie film world. So, $1 million question, how did you get involved in the universe in which SCENEBUX is set? How did you come to Twitter? How did you get obsessed with all of these people?
Well, I was to some degree a latchkey kid, There's sort of a personality archetype of people who, at least my age, sort of the cusp of millennial and Gen Z.
Yeah.
So I'm, 26 through 30 now. A lot of bright young men, sensitive young men. And there's a reason sensitive young men is a meme. It's true, right? A high sensitivity, emotional sensitivity, which can mean high emotional intelligence. It can also mean this sort of overactive sensitivity to criticism, right? Which can actually make you draw within. Spent a lot of time on the unfiltered internet, and this definitely has a filtering effect in terms of who you associate with. Growing up reading a lot of 4chan, going on wherever it is that people lurked when you're 10, 11, 12, 14, 16. The book is about that. in large part.
Right.
What the internet does to your brain. It's sort of
Yeah.
almost like a mourning and then a making peace, and a bit of a warning about this. I certainly won't let my kids grow up with unfiltered internet, but
I see. Going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I hang out with people who are like, whatever, contrarian, I think it's just my personality for whatever it is contrarian. And if I like
You
what
relate.
they have to say and I find it interesting and I don't find them detestable, and there are certainly people I find detestable. There are people you're friends with that I find detestable.
Oh, yeah.
But I decided...
Want to name names?
Years ago,
Just kidding.
No, I don't. No, but the point is, it's kind of like, you can't pick your friends' noses, they say. You can't pick your friends' friends,
Yeah.
And I gave up on this idea of sort of like second-order policing. Because
Yeah.
it destroys everything.
I think it makes sense.
We saw like 5 years of Americans trying to second-order police each other. Why do you follow that person, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You go insane. So
Yeah, and it's like you follow people to learn about them, which I gather you do quite a bit of. But what about, all right, so I'm going to ask this in a cheeky way. Maybe this will be a soundbite, but where are the bucks coming from?
The bucks are hopefully coming from the thousands and thousands of people who learned to love and adore this novel.
Absolutely. You heard it here first. But
currently, I would be remiss if I didn't say the bucks are coming from our patron, our doge, Lord Dan Baltic.
Absolutely. That's where our bucks come from.
Yes. So.
Oh.
Where?
I'm going to say where, yeah. Where are the bucks coming from?
Where are the bucks coming from?
Indeed. Right now, yeah, they're coming from Dan Baltic. They're coming from our various pursuits, and God willing, this thing sells a bajillion copies. You were gonna say? Yeah.
I would be very happy to sell 1,000 copies.
Yeah, so 1,000 copies is the goal.
If you've watched this, you can at least be one of our lucky 1,000.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But we're not naming names, but SCENEBUX, comes from a concept that things are getting funded in the dissident creative realm. Do you want to talk about sort of how you approach that issue?
Yeah, so you guys threw a party, New Ritual threw a party, and crazy people online became very convinced that you were getting funded by everyone from the Mossad to certain prime suspect individuals who have some vested interest in your party being a success. I think it was
there's a YouTube video about it. Yeah.
Adam, who was talking about like $150 in tea lights. Someone was like, how could they afford all those tea lights?
Oh, God, I didn't even see that bit. Yeah.
I watched Adam personally light all those tea lights. So I just thought this was hilarious. And as I said, I already had the seed of this sort of noir plot from when I first started learning about this social set. But the fact is, after you guys threw that party, after I started to meet people face to face, I said, oh, now I can write this not just from the idea of these people, from their avatars and profile pictures. I can actually write it from having met these people. And it just had such a different, sort of more raw, more dirty texture. I'll say something. I meant to say this earlier.
Yeah.
My dad reads pretty much everything that I allow him to read that I publish. He's a very good dad, and he really likes my work, supports me. But this was the first thing I wrote that I was a little worried about him reading. And
was there a sense you might just not understand? It's pretty generational. It's pretty specific in a way.
No, I wasn't worried that he wouldn't understand. I've certainly written things like my short story Network States is equally incomprehensible. But no, I just was worried because it's the character is a little raw and crass, and he's not a great person. And obviously, when you're
I've seen worse in books, but yeah.
He's not the worst boyfriend ever. I'll say that. But he's not great. And obviously, when you're a young man, you're writing a young man, whatever. And my dad said something like, because he read another manuscript of mine, he said, Cairo, if the last thing you wrote was the Dr. Jekyll. This is kind of like the Mr. Hyde.
Yeah. Kalanisha Dreaming being
Yes.
Dr. Jekyll, this being Mr. Hyde.
So, if you want to read a book by a Mr. Hyde, which Mr. Hyde? TBD.
Yeah.
But it is extreme, and hopefully we will make $1 million. And
$1 million.
$1 million.
Indeed.
Bucks.
I guess rounding towards the end here. Hold on, what's his name? It's like Raymond Chandler says the best way to get over a woman is to turn her into a character. Not to speak of any of the women in SCENEBUX, not to delve into personal details. Is there a degree to which this is you getting your interest in some of these fucking weirdos out of your system?
Everybody depicted in this book is entirely fictional and solely a product of my imagination.
Of course.
So,
but do you feel ready to move? I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel ready to maybe, we're always going to be friends, NRP, you're publishing with us, obviously. I mean, this is the thing we think about too. It's like, where's this thing, this scene, it's a cursed word, but where's this scene going? And I often feel like it's time for the scene to sort of dissipate and we go our own way because maybe it served its purpose. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate at all?
So I went clubbing with Matt the other day.
Indeed. Yeah.
After we got out of the club, I said that I had this obsessive limerence with... and
I wanted you to say this now, like in transparency. That's why I brought this up.
Yes. And maybe he took this to mean that I'm not still enamored with the heterodox counterculture, but it certainly is a continuing source of fascination to me. So
as it is for me, of course.
Let me just say this. As your bite, your bit, your bucks. As long as there are people posting weird things on the internet that have some degree of intellectual depth, I will be fascinated, and this will be fodder for my work. There was a guy on Substack recently who was saying that anyone writing, quote, an internet novel needs to get the wall. And
get the wall? What do you mean?
Like get the wall. Like it be subject to a firing squad.
Jesus.
In like commie speak.
Man. Wow.
Yeah.
Chill out.
These are the people we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So anyway, to him I say, you can't stop the future. And
you can't stop the Bucks.
You can't stop the Bucks.
Yeah. Good. I mean, we can keep going because I know you're gonna cut it.
And
all right. Okay. Well, let's.
Yeah, I'll say. So yeah, this thing is going to be available on New Ritual. Sorry, I'm gonna say it. So yeah, this thing is going to be available on newritualpress.com this Saturday, September 6th. It is also, of course, available on Amazon. As a matter of fact, if you go to newritualpress.com, it's going to link you to Amazon. We do use Amazon. It's a wonderful place to buy books. And we're going to sell, I say 3,000 copies.
To start, yeah.
To get started, yeah.
And when you buy it on Amazon, check the box to, you can specifically request that the driver has to piss in the bottle. So it's only like $1.79. So do that. And you can support big business because big
and small business at the same time.
Exactly.
One can do everything. Yeah.
There's a synthesis of this dialectic of capitalism. Spend your bucks, learn about the bucks, maybe one day get the bucks if they're even real. In all honesty, there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of humor in this book.
There is. Yeah.
I'm really glad to have it out in the world. I'm really grateful to New Ritual Press for believing in this book. This book would not be getting nearly the care or love that it is if Matt and Dan had not believed in it. So
of course,
I'm incredibly grateful.
Sorry, go on.
And I'm excited to see where things go from here. So
I read this thing in one go. I'll say my own piece. I don't even know if this ends up in the interview, but I'll say, I read this thing in one go on a plane ride. I mean, the fact that I was on a plane helped, but I also was just completely enraptured in it. And it's a page turner. I don't think I've said this yet, so I think this book is great. I did believe in it right from the start. You're right. It does have a lot of heart. It's almost a satire in parts, but not a bitter satire. It's Voltaire's Candide for the modern age, perhaps. It's the crying of Lot 49 for the modern age, perhaps as well. And I think that, it's a page turner and people are really going to like it.
Well, no matter how many copies we sell, I think the most important thing is that we're having fun, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, this has been fun. And again, not sure if this is for the interview, but I'll even just say it to you. Like, you know, spring equinox event happened. You were there. Rolling Stone article comes out.
The back of my head is in Rolling Stone.
The back of Cairo's head is in Rolling Stone, and the front of mine is also in Rolling Stone. And I mean, we were already wanting to work with you, and I loosely knew, I think, that you had this book coming out. Although, I guess, wait, you wrote it entirely after the event?
Yeah, I wrote it
he writes
entirely.
fast. Yeah.
I do. I write
very prolific and fast.
I kind of want to start a conspiracy theory because, you know, as you may have noticed, I don't have the use of my fingers. How does Cairo Smith write books so
I've never asked.
It's kind of odd. Yeah, I think that we need a truther to get to the bottom of this. So.
I'm sure we do.
One key at a time is the answer.
One key at a time. Yeah. Very inspiring. No, that's cool. But no, I would close on this note. I mean, the whole thing felt fated. You know, you wrote it so fast, but also like we had the spring equinox. It was clear it was a success. We had the spring equinox. It was clear it was a success even before the Rolling Stone article. The Rolling Stone article blew it up, and it was like, we got to publish another book. Would have it no other way than this sort of somewhat self-referential to some of the ideas and culture surrounding the spring equinox event, SCENEBUX. You put it right in our lap at the perfect time, and now it's our second novel, and we couldn't be happier. And it's been a thrilling ride.
And and the ride has only begun.
And the ride has only begun. Where are the bucks? Where are the bucks coming from?
Baby, look at the day.